Hello all. Never in my life did I imagine I'd end up here, reaching out to strangers online for advice. But here we are. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We met back in college and were each other's first and only. I always thought that made our relationship rare and beautiful. Turns out, I was the only one who felt that way. A while ago, my wife started working at a new company. At first, she struggled to fit in. She's always been pretty reserved. But after I encouraged her to put herself out there, she made a group of new friends, most of them single, divorced, or dating casually. At first, I was happy for her, but soon she was going out for drinks, hitting parties, or jumping into whatever plans her friends had. I started to feel uneasy about how much she was changing. I brought it up gently because I didn't want to seem controlling. Still, her new lifestyle was bleeding into our marriage. She was never one to initiate intimacy, but now she was too tired or not in the mood most nights. Then her company brought in a new manager, someone she and her friends clearly liked. She started bringing him up more and more, at first casually, then complimenting how he handled things that weren't even work-related. I finally asked her what was going on with this guy. She brushed me off. Around that time, she started asking me if I regretted never being with anyone else. I told her, honestly, no. She's always been everything I wanted. I swear, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. That's when she brought up the idea of an open marriage. I was shocked. My wife had never been the adventurous, sexually open type, at least not in that way. I said no right away and asked if this had anything to do with her new manager. She denied it, but said she felt like she'd missed out and didn't want to resent me for it. She also didn't want to lose me, and this, according to her, was the safest solution. I told her she was playing with fire, but stupidly I gave in. We set some boundaries, mainly that no one else would be brought into our home. For a year, she went on dates, had flings, and ended up in what was clearly some kind of relationship with her manager. I, on the other hand, went on a few dates, but never followed through with one-night stands. It just didn't feel right. She'd check in now and then, asking if I was okay, but she never actually changed her behavior. Eventually, something broke inside me. The love I had for her, the innocence and purity of our marriage, was gone. And I couldn't stop the ache in my chest. Then I went on a date with someone new. She had just moved here from South Korea. She was quick-witted, sharp, and had a smile that made me forget all my pain. We clicked instantly. That date led to more, and eventually we were intimate. I'd never experienced anything like it, emotionally or physically. She made me feel wanted, like I was someone worth desiring. When my wife first found out, she thought it was cute. But as time passed, she started getting suspicious and insecure about this new woman. I reminded her, calmly, that the open marriage was her idea. I even pointed out she was still in her own affair with the very man I'd once warned her about. She didn't respond. She looked like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Then things changed. She began coming home early to cook dinner. The house was spotless. She even started showing up at my job to bring me lunch. In the bedroom, she suddenly initiated intimacy again. If this had happened before all the damage, I would have been thrilled. But now, I barely responded to her advances. When I did, it was mechanical, just to get it over with. Something inside me had withered, and I think she sensed it too. I asked her what sparked this sudden change. She said she wanted to show me she loved me, that she was still happy with me. I didn't mean to, but I laughed. What about your little circle of friends? Your manager boyfriend? All those one-night stands? I asked. She didn't say anything that night, just quietly went to bed in tears. The next evening, I came home to find her waiting for me. She told me she wanted to close our marriage, said the whole thing had been a terrible mistake. She regretted everything and wanted us to be each other's priority again. I asked her to be honest and tell me what really sparked all of this in the first place. And wouldn't you know it? It was her group of friends who planted the idea. They constantly talked about their wild experiences, and when her manager showed up, he surprisingly supported that kind of lifestyle and encouraged her to live free. What started as emotional flirtation quickly escalated into something physical, conveniently only after the marriage opened up. Like that makes it any better. She described it as being drunk behind the wheel of a speeding car, exhilarating and addictive. But now the cost of it all has become unbearable. She admitted she never needed any comparison, and that what we had was rare and beautiful. But now, she feels like she's destroyed our marriage and ruined any future we might have had. I told her plainly, I don't know if I'll ever be able to see her as my wife again. That broke her down. She cried until she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. Since then, she's quit her job, cut all contact with her manager and those so-called friends, and told me she's willing to spend the rest of her life earning back my trust, doing whatever it takes to be seen as my wife again. But the truth, I haven't stopped seeing my lover. She makes me feel like a man, like I can take on anything, and my wife hasn't made me feel that way in a long time. I'm stuck. A part of me wants that special bond back. But my lover helped pull me out of the darkest time of my life. I don't know what to do anymore. I forgot to mention, we have our first marriage counseling session in a couple of hours. Not sure how that'll go. The therapist seemed experienced and genuinely eager to help. She appeared neutral and open-minded. Even though it was just our first session, my wife laid everything out. She admitted that hanging around that group of friends made her wonder if she had missed out on life. She said she felt trapped by the fact that I was her first and only boyfriend, and she never had the same adventures these free-spirited women claimed to have, many of whom are divorced, none of whom are married. The therapist gently pointed out how damaging that mindset can be in a committed relationship, especially when the couple isn't on the same page. My wife agreed. Then she added that when the new manager began showing her attention, her friends encouraged her to explore it, told her this was her chance to find herself. She said she felt guilty about it, which is why, so she claims, she didn't get physical until one of the divorced friends offered a solution: an open marriage. That friend said some couples even come out stronger afterward. So she says, she convinced me to open up the marriage and started her so-called adventure. She said it was exciting, addictive, but ultimately hollow, not like what we'd built over the years. And that's when she began to question everything. She said she could see the pain in my eyes, but told herself it was all part of the journey. She said she'll never forgive herself for it. At first, she assumed that because I was dating, I'd eventually come to terms with it. But all of that changed once my lover became a regular part of my life. She told me that's when she started noticing I was smiling again, just out of nowhere. My eyes lit up when I got a text or left the room to take a call. And that's when she began getting intense panic attacks. At first, she turned to her friends for advice. They told her it was a normal reaction, that it meant nothing. But then that same friend, the one who first suggested this whole idea, said something that changed everything. "It looks like his lover makes him happy." That one line nearly made my wife collapse. She said it hit her like a ton of bricks. The reality that another woman, not his wife, made her husband feel joy. She panicked. She begged her friends to help her fix things. But they just told her, "If you couldn't handle it, why did you open your marriage in the first place?" That's when she realized those people were toxic, that they were a danger to our marriage and everything we had spent years building. Since then, she's been doing everything she can to win me back. Meanwhile, I kept quiet for the most part, though I did tell the therapist that my lover was still in the picture. The counselor pointed out that no real resolution could be found unless I ended that relationship, and suggested we schedule another session for the following day. She also mentioned how rare it was for someone to stay with their first love for so long, and hinted that any couple could survive a storm with enough effort. I have a strong feeling she wants us to become one of her success stories. Apologies for the length, but I figured I'd give the full picture. Still haven't figured out how to link posts, but I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who reached out. I'm sorry I couldn't respond to every message or comment, but I've read them all. Your support has meant everything. It honestly feels like I've been living through an episode of Jerry Springer. Since my last post, I've moved into an apartment my brother owns, and he gave it to me for a ridiculously low rate. He wanted me to stay rent-free, but I couldn't accept that. Now, let me share just a bit of what I've discovered about my wife's behavior and some unsettling details about her manager. During our second therapy session, I brought up a few questions that people here on Reddit suggested I ask. The first was whether she was absolutely sure that nothing physical had happened between her and the manager before we opened our marriage. She looked down at the floor and begged me not to make her say it. She said that if she admitted it out loud, it would destroy us. But I pressed, and eventually she confessed. She claimed it wasn't physical in the traditional sense. They hadn't had intercourse, but they had engaged in mutual self-pleasure in front of each other. This creep convinced her that because they didn't technically touch each other, it wasn't cheating, that they were just admiring each other's bodies. I was stunned. She started trembling and breathing rapidly, sobbing so hard snot began dripping from her nose. Even the therapist looked shocked. Then my wife collapsed onto her knees, grabbed my legs, and begged for forgiveness. The second question I asked was what made her change how she saw him. She explained that once she began pulling away from the friend group, his attitude shifted. One evening, as she was walking past his office, she overheard him talking to a coworker about her. He said he was surprised how easy it was to get her, said she was proof that you can't trust the quiet ones. When the other guy asked if he actually liked her, the manager laughed and said she was just a nice distraction, that he had zero intention of leaving his fiancée. He added that this fling was just him getting it out of his system, because the only woman who ever truly understood him was his future wife. He even said he felt bad for me, but you snooze, you lose. Hearing all this crushed my wife. She realized she had risked everything for a man who saw her as disposable. She walked out of the building and threw up in the parking lot. Her first thoughts were, "What have I done?" and "God, please forgive me." The third question I asked was whether she ever loved him, and when exactly she stopped loving me. She looked me straight in the eye, through her tears, and said she had never stopped loving me. That made it worse somehow. She said she thought she was in love with the manager, but now realizes how stupid she was. He was just something new, a distraction. She grabbed my arm tightly and said she knew she'd ruined everything, but she missed us, missed what we had before all of this. She even suggested that we pack up and move somewhere new, just the two of us. Start over fresh, like we were always meant to. I told her it wouldn't be fair to my lover, and that I needed time and space to process all of this. At those words, she lost it. Full breakdown. She sobbed harder, muttering things I couldn't even understand, holding on to me like I was going to disappear forever. It took both me and the therapist a while to calm her down. Eventually, the counselor was able to get her to agree that maybe some time apart would be good for both of us, to help us heal. I wish that was the end of the update, but when we got home, as I began packing, my wife got a video call on her laptop. It was one of her former friends, crying hysterically. Apparently, after my wife quit her job, this same friend started seeing the manager, yes, that manager, and ended up in her own mess. She'd had a pregnancy scare, which made him flip out and show his true colors. To make it worse, she had a boyfriend, a guy she truly saw a future with. The only reason she got involved with the manager in the first place was out of curiosity. That seems to be a common theme, doesn't it? Her boyfriend found out about the fling after stumbling across an email exchange between her and the manager discussing the pregnancy. The manager basically accused her of trying to trap him with a baby. Naturally, her boyfriend dumped her. The friend reached out to my wife under the assumption that she had somehow salvaged our marriage and was looking for advice. I couldn't take it. I turned and walked out. I've been staying at the apartment ever since. A lot has happened recently, and I've finally come to some decisions about what lies ahead. First, thank you to everyone who's reached out, whether it was sharing your own experiences, offering insight, or just lending an ear. It means the world to me. Now, on to what's happened. The former friend was pregnant, but the stress of being dumped and exposed caused her to miscarry. After that, she completely lost it and went nuclear on the manager. She reported him to senior management and even reached out to his fiancée. Out of curiosity, I looked her up on Facebook. She seemed like the epitome of the sweet, small-town girl, a special needs teacher, a homebody, family-oriented. My first thought was, what the hell is he doing chasing other women when he's got someone like her at home? Honestly, why do guys like him always end up with women like her? Life's cruel ironies, I guess. The former friend actually contacted me. She wanted my side of the story since she was compiling evidence against him. She insisted on meeting in person. She had already taken a COVID test, and so had I, so I agreed. The moment I saw her, I could tell she was shattered. The bags under her eyes, her bloodshot stare, it all screamed insomnia and torment. She thanked me for agreeing to see her and immediately apologized for her role in my wife's adventure. Apparently, she and my wife had spoken again, and that's when she learned I had moved out. She didn't try to deflect blame. She owned up to her part. She said losing both her child and the love of her life changed her deeply. Now, she can barely look at herself in the mirror. She told me she relives the moment her boyfriend found out over and over again, his face haunting her every time she closes her eyes. I think meeting me was her way of punishing herself. She also told me that since dating coworkers, especially those in power, violates their company's code of conduct, the manager will likely be fired and blacklisted from the industry. She might lose her job too, and she's prepared for that. After she left, I swung by the old house to grab a few things, choosing a time I thought my wife would be out. Unfortunately, she was home. What stunned me, though, was that she had laid out all our wedding photos on the coffee table and was sitting there, just staring at them. Her eyes were swollen and red from crying. When she saw me, she stood and tried to hug me, but I stepped back and gently pushed her away. She offered me lunch, but I declined, saying I wouldn't be staying long. I just needed to collect some things and be on my way. That's when she said she had something to show me. She pulled out her phone and displayed a message she had received 2 days earlier. It was from her former manager, sent from a new number because she'd blocked his original one. He was furious. Apparently, my wife had helped her friend expose him to HR, upper management, and his fiancée. Now he was lashing out at her. She explained that she got the idea from sites like Chump Lady and Marriage Builders. She believed that by dragging the truth into the light, she was stripping it of its power and giving us a fighting chance. I told her I was proud of her for finding the strength to do that, but that it didn't change anything between us. I also informed her that I was ending marriage counseling and would be switching to individual sessions instead. She started sobbing softly and said she understood. I know I'm supposed to feel whether I should feel relief for finally taking these steps or fury that it took this long. I feel nothing. Just numb, and that's not normal. That's why I've decided to continue individual therapy instead of marriage counseling. At my brother's suggestion, I also spoke with a divorce attorney, just to be prepared. Right now, I have no desire to fight for this marriage, and I think my wife can feel that shift. Before I left, she tried to initiate intimacy. When I declined, she suddenly shouted, "What does your lover give you that I can't? What does she do that I can't do better?" Her voice was so loud I wouldn't be surprised if the neighbors heard every word. "Whatever it is, I'll do it," she yelled desperately. I just shook my head. "If you still don't know the answer after everything that's happened," I said quietly, "then that's exactly why this marriage is falling apart." And with that, I walked out.